The deputy emptied her handbag onto the hood of her own truck and laughed while he did it. Lipstick, a folded church bulletin, a coin purse, a bottle of blood pressure pills, all of it spilling across the warm metal in front of the two boys who worked the register. And Della Faison stood there in her gray Sunday dress and did not move, did not raise her voice, only watched her things scatter and thought about the boy waiting for her 40 minutes south, who did not yet know she was going to be late. That is the picture. Hold it. A woman with silver hair and a quiet face, 63 years old, watching a man in a brown uniform shake out the last of her purse like he was looking for something he already knew was not there. Now let me take you back to the morning before any of it, when the worst thing in Della Faison's day was supposed to be the price of gas. She had left the house at 7:15. The coffee she made that morning she drank standing at the kitchen window, the way she had every morning for 31 years, watching the light come up gray and then gold over the pecan tree her late husband Curtis had planted the spring their daughter was born. The tree had outlived him by 9 years now. She rinsed the cup, set it upside down on the dish towel the way she liked it, and pressed her thumb against the soil of the African violet on the sill to see if it needed water. It did not. She told it so out loud, the way she talked to the things in her house, and then she got her keys. The truck was a 1991 model with 210,000 miles on it, and a passenger door that you had to lift slightly while you pulled, or it would catch. Curtis had bought it used the year before he passed, and her daughter Renee had begged her a dozen times to let her buy a newer one. Della would not. The truck smelled like him still, if she let herself believe it did faint under the air freshener and the years, and there were some mornings she did let herself believe it. She was driving south that day to a town called Maxton Springs, 2 hours down through the flat farm country to pick up her grandson. His name was Andre. He was 19, and he was her daughter's only child. He had finished his first year at the state university and had been staying the summer with a cousin working. And 3 days ago, he had called her instead of his mother, which he had never done, and asked if she could come get him. He had not said much on the phone. He had said he needed to come stay with her for a little while, and that he could not explain it over the phone, and that it was important she came herself and did not send anyone. There had been something flattened in his voice that she did not like. She had not pushed him. You did not push Andre. He was the kind of boy who told you things when he was ready, and not 1 minute before, the same as his grandfather. So she had said, "Of course, baby, I'll come Thursday. I'll be there by 10. And he had said, "Thank you, Grandma." And then, before he hung up, he had said one more thing. He had said, "Don't tell anybody the day I'm coming home. Just you." And she had felt the cold come up her arms then. And she had said, "All right." She had not slept well since. "That is the first thing I need you to carry." The boy had a reason to be afraid, and she did not yet know what it was, and she was driving toward him. The second thing is the phone. Renee had set it up for her the Christmas before, a smartphone, and had spent a whole afternoon at the kitchen table teaching her where everything was, getting frustrated, and then patient, and then frustrated again, the way daughters do. She had shown her the camera. She had shown her, almost as a joke, where the little red button was that recorded sound. And Della had laughed and said, "Now what would I ever need to record?" And Renee had said, "You never know, Mama." She had pinned the recorder to the bottom of the screen so it would be easy to find. Della had never once used it. She filled up the first time in her own town and was on the highway by 7:30. The radio low on the gospel station, the farm country opening up flat and green on both sides. She made good time. By 9:30, she was through the last real town before Maxton Springs, and the gas was down to a quarter tank, and there was a long, empty stretch ahead of her with nothing on it. So she pulled off at a place she did not know, a small station on the corner where the state road met the county road. Pumps that looked older than her truck. A convenience store with a buzzing red "Open" sign in the window, and a hand-lettered notice taped to the door about the price of cigarettes. 2 young men inside, one behind the counter and one stocking a cooler she should have driven on. She would think that later many times, and then she would correct herself, because she had done nothing wrong, and a person who has done nothing wrong should be able to stop for gas anywhere in this country. That was the whole trouble with thinking should have. It put the fault back on her, and the fault was never hers. She pumped $20 because that was what she always pumped, and she went inside to pay because she did not trust the card readers on old pumps. The boy behind the counter was named Miguel, though she did not know that yet. He was maybe 20, dark hair, a kindness in his face that came out in the way he said good morning to her like he meant it, and asked how she was doing today. She said she was blessed and asked the same of him, and he smiled and said he could not complain. She paid in cash. She bought a pack of peppermints. She was counting her change back into the coin purse when the bell on the door went, and a man came in, and the temperature of the room changed. I want to be careful here, because the change was not in anything that was said. It was in the boys. Miguel's face closed. The one stocking the cooler, whose name was Eli, straightened up and got very busy with cans that did not need straightening. The man who came in was big, 6'2" or 3", heavy through the chest and gut, in a brown sheriff's department uniform, with the sleeves a little tight on him, and mirrored sunglasses he did not take off indoors. There was a patch on his shoulder for a county Della had never heard of. His name tag said READDD. He was holding a fountain drink the size of a small bucket, and he did not pay for it, and the boys did not ask him to, and that told her everything about how things worked in that store. He looked at her. Just looked, top to bottom, the way you look at a piece of furniture you are deciding whether to keep. And then he looked at Miguel and said, "This lady bothering you?" Miguel said, "No, sir, she's just paying." And Della said, "Good morning," to the deputy, because that was how she had been raised. You greet a person, even when the person has not earned it. Edie did not answer her. He sucked on his straw and walked to the window and looked out at her truck sitting at the pump. The old blue Isuzu with the rust along the wheel wells and the church parking sticker on the back glass. And Della watched the back of his head and felt the morning tilt. She finished with her change. She said, "You all have a blessed day," and she went out the door into the heat, and she had the truck door open and one foot up into the cab when she heard the boots on the gravel behind her. "Ma'am," the deputy said, "I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle." She put her foot back down. She turned around. He was standing about 6 feet off with his thumbs hooked in his belt and the fountain drink set down on the hood of her truck, sweating a ring onto the metal. And behind him, she could see now that he had pulled his patrol car in crooked, at an angle that blocked the exit, and at some point he had switched the light bar on blue and red, turning silently in the bright morning, so that they hardly showed at all. "What's the trouble, officer?" she said. "That's your vehicle." "It is. You got registration for it." "In the glove box. You want me to get it." "Don't reach for anything," he said. "Step over here." And here is where I want to slow all the way down. Because what happened next happened to a woman who had done nothing. And it happened in the open, in the daylight, with 2 witnesses, and a county road full of cars going by. And not one of them stopped. He told her there had been a report. A card had been used at that station. He said a stolen card earlier in the week, by a black female in an older vehicle, and he had reason to believe it might be her. He said it the way you would read it off a page, bored, like the words had been used before on somebody else and would be used again. Della told him she had paid cash. She told him the boy inside had taken her cash and could say so. He said he would be the judge of who said what. He told her to produce her identification, and when she moved toward the cab to get her purse, he said, "Don't reach in there." And when she stopped, he said, "Why are you being difficult?" And there was no answer to that. There is never any answer to that. Because the difficulty was him, and they both knew it. He made her hand him the purse. She did not want to. Every part of her that was 63 years old and had buried a husband and raised a daughter alone, and sat on more boards and committees than this man had years, did not want to hand a stranger her purse on the side of a road. But she had also lived long enough to know the arithmetic of the moment, the cold math of it. A big man with a gun and a badge and a temper and no cameras he answered to, and a boy 2 hours away who needed her to arrive in one piece. So she handed him the purse. And he carried it to the hood of her truck, and he turned it over, and he shook it out. I told you about that already. The lipstick, the bulletin from last Sunday's service, the little brown bottle of pills, the coin purse coming open and the change rolling, and 1 quarter going off the edge of the hood and into the gravel where it lay shining. He spread it all out with 2 fingers like he was sorting trash, and he kept up a low commentary the whole time. Isn't this something? Look at all this. You people always got a story. And Della stood with her hands folded in front of her and looked at a spot just over his shoulder and breathed the way her mother had taught her to breathe in church when the spirit got to be too much. Slow down into the belly. And she did not cry, and she did not shout. She had learned a long time ago that her dignity was the one thing he could not take unless she handed it to him, the way she had handed him the purse, and she was not going to do that twice. Miguel had come to the glass door of the store. She could see him there, half in and half out, his hand on the frame. Eli was behind him. Neither one came out. I want you to understand that I am not going to pretend that was simple. Miguel was 20 years old. He had a mother in another country he sent money to every month, and a manager who watched the camera feed from home, and a deputy who never paid for his drink, and who could make a young man's life in a small town very hard if that young man got ideas about being a witness. He stood in the doorway with all of that on him, and he did the only thing he felt he could do. He took out his phone, down low against his leg where Edie could not see it, and he started to type. And here is the thing Edie could not see at all. Della had her own phone in her left hand, down at her side, half hidden in the fold of her gray dress, and while the deputy bent over the hood, narrating his way through a 63-year-old woman's belongings, her thumb had found the bottom of the screen, the little red button her daughter had pinned there as a joke, and she had pressed it. The screen had gone to the recorder. The seconds were counting up. You listening, you know it is running. He does not. Hold that. That is the first thing in this whole morning that belongs to her. Officer, she said, and her voice was so steady it surprised even her. My name is Della Faison. I paid cash inside this store not 5 minutes ago, and that young man at the door watched me do it. I have not used a card here today or any day. You are welcome to call your dispatch and ask about any report you like. But I would ask you to put my things back in my bag. Edie straightened up. He took the sunglasses off then, finally, and his eyes were small and pale and pleased, and he looked at her with something close to delight, because she had done the thing he wanted. She had spoken up. She had given him a reason. You giving me instructions now? He said. I'm asking you to return my property. Your property, he said, and he laughed a real laugh, head back. He picked up the church bulletin between 2 fingers and let it drop. You hear this? He said to the boys, to the road, to nobody. Lady rolls in here in a truck about to fall apart, can't hardly afford the gas, and she's giving me instructions about her property. He leaned in. His drink sweated on the hood. You don't tell me anything, he said. You understand? Out here, I tell you. She did not answer. The seconds counted up against her leg. He keyed the radio on his shoulder and called for a tow. He said the vehicle was being held pending an investigation. He read off her plate, and when he was done, he looked back at her, and he saw something change in her face just slightly, because a tow meant she did not have the truck, and without the truck, she did not get to Maxton Springs, and the boy was waiting. And the deputy saw the worry move across her, even though she tried not to let it. and it fed him. "Somewhere to be," he said. "My grandson," she said before she could stop herself. "I'm supposed to pick up my grandson." She regretted it the instant it left her. You did not give a man like this anything true. He filed it away. She watched him file it. "Well," he said, slow, "the boy's gonna have to wait, isn't he? Maybe it does him good to wait on somebody for once." This is the part where I tell you she nearly broke. Not on the outside, on the inside, where it counted, where a woman keeps the thing that lets her stand up straight. Because it was 9:40 in the morning and she was supposed to be in Maxton Springs by 10, and Andre had told her, "Don't tell anybody the day I'm coming home, just you." And here she was, stopped dead on the side of a road in a county she did not know, and a man who hated her on sight was going to have her truck towed, and there was not one single thing she could do about it that would not make it worse. She had spent her whole life being told to be patient, be calm, be twice as good, give them nothing. And she had done it. She had done all of it, and it had brought her here, to a hood covered in the contents of her own purse. "Call whoever you want," Edie said. He had seen her looking at the phone now. He had seen it in her hand, and he had decided it was nothing an old woman's phone, a lifeline to nobody. "Go on, call your grandson, call a lawyer, call the president." He grinned, and the grin was the cruelest thing yet because it was so sure. "You think anybody's coming out here for you? Out here it's me. You can call whoever you want." And Della Faison looked at him for a long moment. Then she lifted the phone, and she made a call. I have to back up now because if I do not, what comes next will land like a trick, and this is not a trick. It is the opposite of a trick. Everything was already true before that morning. I just have to tell you the part of it the deputy did not know. While the phone was ringing, let me tell you about Miguel's text. He had a cousin, 2 years older, named Cruz, who had worked for the county a short while, and quit angry, and who now drove a route for a parcel company and knew everybody. Miguel had typed to Cruz fast, under the counter, "The deputy from out by the river is hassling an old lady at the store. The heavy one, Edie. He's gonna tow her truck, and she didn't do nothing." And Cruz had written back almost at once, "That guy again?" and then, "Hold on." And Miguel did not know what "hold on" meant, but he held on, and he kept his phone down by his leg, and he watched. Because here is the thing about Roy Edie that the town knew and did not say. He had done this before. Not the exact same, but the same in kind. There had been a man named Walter Tillman, an older black man who fixed small engines out of a shed behind his house, who had been pulled over by Edie 3 times in 1 month for a taillight that 2 other people swore worked fine, and who had finally just stopped driving, sold his truck, let the engine business go because it was not worth it. There had been a girl, 17, walking home from her shift at the chicken plant, whom Edie had followed at 5 miles an hour for half a mile with his window down, and who would not walk that road anymore. There had been others. None of it had ever stuck. The complaints went into a drawer. The sheriff was Edie's wife's uncle. That is how it works in a small place. The drawer fills up and nothing comes out of it, and a man learns that the drawer is bottomless. And he starts to believe the thing every petty tyrant comes to believe, which is that there is no one above him who will ever come down. That belief is a kind of blindness. It made him unable to see the woman in front of him as anything other than what he had already decided she was, and so he could not see what she actually was. Let me tell you, Della Faison had not always been a widow in a small house talking to her violets. For 26 years, she had worked for the state. She had started as a clerk, and she had ended 3 years before she retired as the director of the office that wrote and ran the ethics and conduct training for every law enforcement agency that took state money, which, in that state, was nearly all of them. Every deputy who pinned on a badge in the last 15 years had sat through a course her office built. She had written parts of the manual herself. She had testified to the legislature on use of force. She had sat across the table from sheriffs and police chiefs and made them uncomfortable. And she had done it in a gray dress and a quiet voice. And a great many men had badly underestimated her over the years and learned better. And the learning had always cost them more than it cost her. And the man whose name was on the door of the highest office in that state, the governor, was a man named Grady Outlaw. And he had been a young assistant in that same legislature 20 years ago, a nobody staffer, when Della Faison had taken a fight to the committee that everybody told her she would lose, and won it. And Grady Outlaw had watched her do it and had never forgotten. He had stayed in touch, the way people do when one of them is going up, a card at Christmas, a call when her Curtis passed. When he was sworn in, he had put her on a panel, and when she retired, he had written her a letter in his own hand. They were not close, but she had his cell number because he had given it to her himself and told her to use it if she ever needed it. And in 11 years, she never once had. Now hold one more thing, the heaviest thing, before I let the morning go forward. The grandson, Andre. The boy 2 hours south who had called his grandmother instead of his mother and said, "Don't tell anybody the day I'm coming home." Andre had spent the summer in Maxton Springs, in the very county where Roy Eady wore his badge. And 3 weeks earlier, Andre had been in the passenger seat of his cousin's car when that car was stopped on the dark road by a deputy, and the boy driving had been pulled out and handled in a way that had frightened Andre badly. And Andre had done a thing that 19-year-olds do now without thinking. He had filmed it. He had filmed the whole stop on his phone from the passenger seat, low against the door, the same way Miguel was filming now, the same way his grandmother was recording now. And what he had filmed was bad enough that when the right people saw it, it had become the start of something. A state inquiry had opened, quiet, into a pattern of stops in that county. Andre was a witness in it, and the deputy in his video. The heavy one, who never showed his face to the camera, but whose voice and whose name on the report were unmistakable, was Roy Eady. The boy was afraid because he had been told, in the way these things get communicated in a small place, that it would be better for him if he forgot what he saw. That is why he wanted to come home. That is why he said, "Tell no one the day." That is why his grandmother was on that road that morning at all. She did not know all of this. She knew her grandson was scared and would not say of what. She did not know the man emptying her purse onto her husband's truck was the same man her grandson had filmed. The world is sometimes built like that, with two threads running toward each other in the dark, and neither end knowing. But you know now. So when I tell you she lifted the phone and made a call, you understand it was not a bluff. The first call did not go through. She had not called the governor. She would not have, not first, not for this. A woman does not call the governor of a state because a deputy is being cruel to her at a gas pump. She had more sense and more pride than that. She had called her daughter, Renee, who was a nurse, who would be between patients maybe, who would know what to do. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Renee's bright, recorded voice, and Della stood there with the deputy watching her and the dead air in her ear, and felt the bottom go out of the morning. Edie saw it. Of course he saw it. No answer, he said, almost gentle now, almost sorry for her, the way a cat is sorry for a thing it has under its paw. "Tow truck's 20 minutes out. Why don't you go ahead and have a seat in my car while we wait?" And he moved toward her, and he took his cuffs off his belt, not to use them necessarily, just to show them, just to let the metal catch the light. And that was the moment. That was the true bottom of it. A 63-year-old woman standing over her spilled things while a man dangled handcuffs and a tow truck came to take the last thing her husband had left her. She did not get in his car. She said, "You have no cause to detain me," and her voice did not shake, but it was lower than before, and he heard the change, and he liked it, and he said, "Get in the car, ma'am." And Miguel in the doorway made a sound, a small, involuntary no that nobody heard, and Della understood with a terrible clarity that she was about to lose. Not the truth was hers, but the morning, the hour, the chance of reaching Andre, the simple dignity of driving away unbothered, all of that was about to be lost. And there was a tow truck coming, and her daughter had not answered. So she made the second call. She did not announce it. She did not say to the deputy, "You'll be sorry," or, "Do you know who I am?" None of the lines that people imagine they would say, because those lines are for people who are not actually sure, and Della was sure. She simply found the name in her phone, a name she had never once dialed in 11 years, and she pressed it, and she turned slightly away from the deputy and held the phone to her ear, the recorder still running underneath the call, the way her daughter had set it up to do. And she waited while it rang. It rang twice. A man's voice answered, careful the way you answer an unknown circumstance from a number you half remember. He said her name like a question. "Della, is that you?" And she said, "Governor. I'm sorry to call you like this, I surely am. But I'm in some trouble I can't get out of by myself, and I didn't have anyone else to call." There was a pause on the line. Edie had stopped moving. He could not hear the other end, but he could hear the word governor, and his face had begun very slightly to do something it had not done all morning, which was to think. Grady Outlaw said, "Where are you? Tell me where you are right now." She told him. The corner where the state road met the county road, the old station with the red sign, the name of the county. She heard him repeat it to someone, with him fast, his hand half over the phone, and she heard the someone moving. And Grady Outlaw came back on and said, "Della, are you safe? Is anyone hurting you?" And she looked at the deputy and the cuffs and the spilled purse, and she said, "No one's hurt me, but there's a deputy here who's emptied my pocketbook onto my truck and called a tow, and he means to put me in his car. And I have done nothing, Grady. I bought gas. I'm trying to get to Andre." And here is what the deputy heard on Della's end in the bright, still heat, with the light bar turning silent behind him. He heard her say, "No, sir, I'll put you on the speaker so the officer can hear you himself." And she took the phone from her ear, and she pressed the speaker, and she held it out flat on her palm between herself and Roy Edie, like an offering, like a collection plate. And the voice that came out of it was not loud, but it filled the whole gravel lot. And the two boys heard it, and the cars going by could have heard it. And Roy Edie heard it. And the voice said, "This is Governor Grady Outlaw. To whom am I speaking?" I told you the deputy had begun to think. Now I have to tell you that thinking did not save him, because by the time a man like Roy Edie starts to think, he is already, out of pure habit, said too much. And there was a phone recording all of it on her palm, and another phone filming all of it from the doorway, and the morning had quietly assembled while he was bent over a purse enjoying himself. Every single thing required to end him. He did not answer the voice right away. He looked at the phone in her hand the way you look at a snake you have just realized is not a stick. And then he did the thing that pride does, the thing that had worked his whole life in that bottomless drawer county. He tried to bluster through it. "I don't know who that is," he said loud to the lot. "Could be anybody. Could be her son," with a deep voice. He gave a laugh that did not come off. "Ma'am, put your phone away." The voice on the phone did not raise itself. "Deputy," it said, because it had heard him, because the speaker carried both ways. "I'm going to ask you for your name and your badge number, and I'd advise you to give them to me." And Roy Edie, who had spent 15 years learning that no one came down from above, made the mistake of his life, which was to keep talking the way he always had, because he did not yet believe all the way down in the place where belief lives, that the man on the phone was real. "With respect," he said, and there was no respect in it. "I don't know that you're who you say. I got a procedure here. This vehicle's being held on a report, and the subject's being detained. And whoever you are, you can take it up with the sheriff's office during business hours." "The subject," the voice repeated slowly. "You're telling me you've got Della Faison detained?" He said her full name. He said it the way you say a name you respect, and the saying of it changed the air, because Edie heard in the governor's mouth that this old woman in the gray dress had a full name to a man like that she was known, that she was somebody's, that the thread he thought ran to nobody ran all the way to the top of the state. He stopped talking. "Here is what I will not do. I will not give you the whole of the next 40 minutes, blow by blow, the way the deputy gave Della's purse, because cruelty is in the detail, and I would rather give you the consequence than the gore. So let me tell it the way it deserves to be told, which is as a thing coming apart." The governor stayed on the line. That was the first thing nobody expected, that he did not hang up and make a call and let the machinery turn, but stayed his voice on her palm in the gravel lot, while in some office 2 hours away the machinery did turn anyway, fast, around the steady fact of his presence. He asked Della to keep the phone where it was. He asked her was she recording, and she said her daughter had set the phone to record, and it had been recording the whole time. And on the line you could hear the governor go very still, and then say, "Good. Good, Della." He asked Edie his name and badge number a second time into the silence, and this time, because the word governor had finally gone all the way down, Edie gave them. You could hear it cost him. "R. Edie," he said, and the number in a voice gone flat. Within those 40 minutes, the tow truck arrived and was sent away because a call had come to the tow company from the sheriff's own office, a sheriff who had just been woken up, in effect, by a call from the governor's office that he would remember for the rest of his life. A call that informed him that one of his deputies was at that moment detaining, without cause, a retired state director who happened to be a personal friend of the governor, and that the entire encounter was being recorded by at least 2 devices, and that the sheriff might want to consider very carefully what he did in the next 10 minutes. The sheriff considered very carefully. A second patrol car arrived, and out of it came a younger deputy, a woman named Carmen Sloan, who took one look at the purse spread across the hood, and the old woman standing over it, and the light bar still turning for no reason, and who did the thing that the whole town had needed somebody in a uniform to do for years, which was to be ashamed. She gathered Della's things off the hood herself, carefully, the lipstick and the bulletin and the pills, the quarter out of the gravel, and she put them back in the purse, and she handed it to Della with both hands, and she said, "Ma'am, I am so sorry." And she meant it, and it did not fix anything, and it opened a crack because she said it in front of Edie, a deputy apologizing to the woman he had hunted, and that apology would matter later in a room with lawyers in it. And here is the failure I promised you, because it is true, and because the truth is not symmetrical. In the middle of all of it, before the sheriff's call landed, there was a stretch of maybe 10 minutes where it looked like it would not work. The governor's first attempts to reach the sheriff went to a voicemail. The tow truck was hooking the chain to her bumper. Carmen Sloan had not yet arrived. And Della stood there with the governor's voice low in her ear, now off speaker again, saying, "Hold on, Della. Hold on. I'm getting him." And she watched the chain go tight on Curtis's truck, and she thought, it is not going to be in time. Even this, even the governor, the drawer is too deep. And she felt something she had not let herself feel all morning, which was the full weight of how tired she was. 63 years of holding her face still. And she closed her eyes there in the heat. And she did not pray for justice. She had given up on justice as a thing that arrived on schedule. She prayed, "Only let me get to Andre." And then the second car came, and the chain came off, and the morning turned. The last thing Roy Eady did at that gas station, before he was told to return to the department and surrender his service weapon pending review, was reach out, almost without thinking, and pick his fountain drink up off the hood of Della Faison's truck, where it had sat sweating its ring into the paint for the better part of an hour. It was the only thing on that hood that was his. He picked it up and he held it, and he did not seem to know what to do with it. A big man holding a paper cup, and he carried it to his patrol car and got in, and he did not look at the woman again, and he drove off slow, with the light bar finally dark, and the cup was still in his hand. That is the picture of him I will leave you with. Not raging, holding a drink with nowhere to put it. It came apart for him quickly after that, the way things do when the drawer finally opens. The recording on Della's phone, 51 minutes of it, was clear from the first word. You could hear him say, "Isn't this something?" You could hear him say, "Out here it's me." You could hear him say, "Call whoever you want." And you could hear 2 minutes and 40 seconds later who she called. Miguel's video, shaky and low, caught the purse going over and the cuffs coming off the belt and the boys' faces. The two recordings together left no room anywhere for a story. The inquiry that had quietly opened into the county's stops, the one Della's grandson Andre was a witness in. The one Andre had filmed 3 weeks before from the passenger seat of his cousin's car, had, until that morning, been one of those slow investigations that a small county can sometimes wait out, that can be starved of attention until it goes away. It did not go away now. It could not, because the governor of the state had, with his own ears, listened to a deputy from that county detain a woman without cause and threaten to jail her. And there is no waiting out a thing the governor heard himself. The inquiry widened within the week. Investigators who had been polite became thorough. The drawer of old complaints, the one with Walter Tillman in it, and the girl from the chicken plant in it, and all the others, was pulled open and read into the record. And the video Andre had been afraid to be known for, the one that had sent him running home to his grandmother, became one piece among many, which meant that for the first time the boy was not alone out in front of it. He was one witness in a crowd of them. The thing he had been told to forget, everyone now remembered. Roy Eady was suspended, then terminated. There was a hearing. Carmen Sloan testified, and so did Miguel, who was more frightened of testifying than of anything he had ever done, and did it anyway in a clean shirt, and who was protected by the fact that the governor's office was watching, so that the manager who watched the cameras from home thought better of firing him. The sheriff, the wife's uncle, did not survive the year in his office. He announced he would not seek another term, which is the polite way a small county says a man was pushed. Eady was charged in the end not with the gas station alone, but as part of the pattern, and the pattern was the thing that held, because a pattern cannot claim it was a bad day. His name, which had meant safety to some and dread to others, came to mean only one thing, attached forever to what he had done. So that years later, when his name was said in that county, people would lower their voices, not out of fear of him anymore, but the way you lower your voice over a thing that went wrong and got fixed too late to undo the hurt of it. His wife left the county. That is one sentence, and it is all the sentence it deserves. She had her own life and her own reasons, and I will not pretend to know them. Only that the house they had lived in went up for sale, and she was not in the town after that. And Walter Tillman, the old man who had sold his truck and given up fixing engines because a deputy would not leave him be, was sought out by an investigator and asked to tell what had happened to him. And he did. And when it was over, somebody helped him get another truck second-hand. And by the next spring, there was a hand-lettered sign back up behind his house. Small engines repaired. And the sound of a mower being tested ran down the road again on weekend mornings the way it used to. The girl from the chicken plant walked that road home again. Small things. The world does not give back the years. It only sometimes lets the road be walked. Carmen Sloan, the deputy who gathered the purse, made sergeant. Not as a reward exactly, no one handed it to her, but because the department that came after the reckoning needed people in it who knew how to be ashamed at the right time. And there were not many, and she was one. Miguel's cousin Cruz, who had written Hold On, never did anything dramatic, but he told the story for years accurately, which is its own kind of holding the line. And Della Faison got back in her husband's truck with her purse on the seat beside her and the ring from the deputy's drink still on the hood. And she lifted the catching passenger door from the inside the way she always did, so it would shut right. And she drove the rest of the way south, to Maxton Springs. She was an hour and 10 minutes late. Andre was sitting on the steps outside his cousin's apartment with a duffel bag between his feet and the look of a boy who had decided in the long hour past 10 o'clock that something had gone wrong and he would have to be brave about it. When he saw the blue truck turn in, he stood up so fast he knocked the bag over. She did not tell him everything, not then in the parking lot with the engine still ticking. She would tell him later, over weeks, in pieces, the way her family told each other true things. In the parking lot, she only got out and lifted the bad door so it would not catch, and held it open for him and said, "Get in, baby. Your grandmother's sorry she's late. She had some business on the road." And Andre, who did not yet know that the business on the road had been with the very man whose voice was on his own phone, who did not yet know that the two threads in the dark had been her and Edie all along, got in the truck. He put the duffel at his feet. He looked at his grandmother's face for the thing that was different in it, because there was something different in it, and he could not name it, and he did not ask. She pulled out onto the road north. After a few miles, he reached over and turned the radio up, the gospel station, because he knew she liked it, and she let him, and they drove home that way, the boy safe in the seat his grandfather had once sat in. The silver-haired woman with both hands on the wheel of the old truck, north into the long, flat, green afternoon, neither one of them saying the thing they were both, in their different ways, beginning to understand, which was that she had come for him, and she had not been alone, and that this time, this once, it had been enough. The pecan tree was waiting when they got home. She pointed it out to him like she always did. If you've ever stood where Della stood, holding still while someone decided you were less than you are, you know the loneliest part is not the cruelty, it is the silence around it, the faces in the doorway that do not come out. So let me ask you something, and I'd like you to sit with it. When you've been in the room where someone was being treated as if they did not matter, which one? Were you the one who looked away, or the one who took out the phone? And the harder question underneath it, if it cost you something real, your job, your standing, your safety, to be the second one, do you know for certain which one you'd be? None of us knows until the morning comes. Tell me in the comments about a time you found out about yourself. I read them, and I learn from them. If this story moved you, subscribe and stay with us. Share it with someone who needs to hear that the silence can break. We tell these stories so the road can be walked.